In January 1983, an event occurred in the South China Sea that still raises questions and much controversy among historians and naval researchers. A Soviet nuclear-powered submarine collided with an unknown object at great depths, causing serious damage and endangering the lives of the entire crew. This incident still remains one of the most mysterious pages in the history of the Soviet submarine fleet. In this video, we will detail what happened that day, what consequences it had, and what versions exist about what the submarine encountered. The Soviet submarine fleet in the 1980s. By the early 1980s, the Soviet Union had one of the most powerful and advanced submarine fleets in the world. Nuclear-powered submarines played a key role in ensuring strategic parity during the Cold War, with missions of patrolling the world's oceans, reconnaissance, and readiness for nuclear strikes in the event of conflict. Special attention was paid to the Pacific and Indian Oceans, where Soviet submarines maintained a permanent presence, tracking the movements of NATO fleets and performing reconnaissance missions. The South China Sea was one such region where Soviet interests overlapped with those of other world powers, especially the United States and China. Preparing for patrols, the Soviet nuclear-powered submarine that was destined to collide with an unknown object in January 1983 was one of the advanced ships of its time. The submarine belonged to Project 671 RTMK Shchuka, NATO classification, Victor III, which was a modernized version of multi-purpose nuclear submarines. These boats were characterized by high maneuverability, speed, and ability to dive to great depths. They were armed with torpedoes and cruise missiles, making them a serious threat to surface ships and other enemy subs. In early January 1983, the submarine went out on another patrol in the South China Sea. The crew consisted of experienced officers and sailors who had already participated in similar missions more than once. The main task of the trip was patrolling and tracking the movements of the American and Chinese fleets, as well as collecting intelligence information. Incident in the South China Sea. In mid-January, when the submarine was at a depth of about 200 meters, there was a sudden and powerful shock. The crew instantly felt a strong jolt, and the submarine began to lurch sharply to the side. An alarm was sounded in all compartments, and the commander ordered the sub to ascend to a shallower depth and assess the damage. Initially, the crew assumed that the submarine might have collided with an underwater rock or seabed, but navigational data showed that the boat was at a safe depth, away from any known underwater obstacles. The commander decided to conduct a hull inspection using underwater cameras and instruments, which confirmed the presence of severe damage to the bow of the submarine, the nature of the damage and the actions of the crew. After the incident, it was determined that the bow of the submarine had sustained significant damage, including hull deformation and failure of a number of critical systems. The crew immediately began to repair the consequences of the accident to prevent further damage and maintain the ability to control the vessel. One of the main tasks was to eliminate possible leaks and restore the tightness of the compartments. The crew managed to stabilize the situation and prevent flooding, but the submarine lost some of its maneuverability and ability to dive to great depths. The commander decided to stop patrolling and return to base for repairs and further investigation. Versions and theories about the collision. After the submarine returned to base, an investigation began to determine exactly what the vessel had collided with. Various theories were put forward, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. Collision with an underwater rock or the seabed. The first version that was considered by the command suggested that the submarine could have collided with an underwater rock or the seabed, despite the navigation data. However, this theory was quickly dismissed because damage to the submarine's hull indicated contact with something moving or a moving object rather than a fixed obstacle. Collision with an underwater vessel. The second theory suggested that the submarine may have collided with another submarine, possibly an American or Chinese submarine. Such incidents were not uncommon during the Cold War, and there were occasional collisions between submarines of the two superpowers. However, no data on the presence of other submarines in the area of the incident has been received, and this version has not been confirmed either. Contact with an unknown object. The third and most mysterious version concerned collision with an unknown underwater object. The nature of the damage and its location on the hull indicated that the object was hard and dense enough to cause serious damage to the submarine. However, its nature remained unknown. Underwater anomalies and NGOs. Against the background of this version, more exotic theories appeared. Some researchers suggested that the submarine could have collided with the so-called NGO, unidentified underwater object, some object with anomalous characteristics and capable of moving at high speeds underwater. This version was often discussed in the circles of ufologists and researchers of anomalous phenomena, but was not widely recognized among military experts. Command, reaction, and precautions. The incident caused serious concern in the Soviet command, especially given the importance of the South China Sea region and the strategic significance of the Project 671RTMK Shchuka submarines. Additional inspections were conducted on all submarines involved in patrol operations in the region to ensure that such incidents would not occur again. The command also strengthened precautions in planning future missions, including a more thorough study of patrol areas and increased crew preparedness for potential emergencies. The 1983 incident was an important lesson for the Soviet Navy, emphasizing that even in peacetime, submarines can encounter unexpected and dangerous situations. Versions in retrospect many years have passed, but the 1983 incident remains a subject of discussion and speculation. Some former military personnel and researchers continue to offer theories about the possible nature of the collision. One of the most popular hypotheses remains contact with an unknown underwater object that could have been either natural, e.g., a giant sea creature or a previously unknown life form, or artificial, e.g., an experimental underwater vessel or unmanned vehicle. This version is supported by a number of specialists who point to numerous cases of observations of strange underwater objects in various parts of the world's oceans. In favor of this hypothesis is also the nature of the damage, which was not typical of collisions with ordinary objects. Consequences of the incident for the USSR Navy. The incident in the South China Sea had a significant impact on the further development of the Soviet Navy. The command revised its approach to patrolling in inaccessible and dangerous regions, such as the South China Sea, and introduced new safety protocols for submarines, especially in the face of possible collisions with unknown objects. The incident also prompted a more thorough investigation of underwater anomalies and seabed features in the region. A series of expeditions and studies were conducted to investigate possible underwater obstacles and anomalies that could pose a threat to submarines. The case also emphasized the importance of preparing crews for non-emergency situations and the need to respond promptly to any submarine-related incidents. The experience gained from this incident helped to improve the training of submariners and increase their preparedness for potential emergencies. Conclusion. The incident involving a Soviet submarine in the South China Sea in January 1983 remains one of the most mysterious and debated pages in the history of the Soviet submarine fleet. There are still no unambiguous answers to the question of what exactly the submarine collided with at depth and what consequences the event could have had in case of more serious damage. Various versions and theories, from collision with another submarine to contact with an unidentified underwater object, continue to pique the interest of researchers and historians. This case serves as a reminder of the dangers submariners face and how unpredictable submarine conditions can be. We hope this story has helped you better understand what happened in the South China Sea in 1983 and what lessons were learned from the incident. Subscribe to our channel, give us a like, and share your opinion in the comments. See you on our channel.